I'm Aaron with Precision Restorations, and today we're going to talk about what to look for after you bought a car from auction. These are some of the most common things to look at. One thing we do is we want to look at just the basic maintenance of the vehicle before we start driving it. Obviously you want to check the fluids. Car's got to be cool. We'll check the radiator, make sure that there's plenty of fluid, make sure it's green, make sure it's clear, it's not dirty, those type of things. Check the oil. When's the last time the oil was changed? That's important. We want to make sure we use oil with ZDP in it, zinc, for these older flat tappet type of vehicles. Obviously, we want to take a look at the belts, make sure that they're in good shape, they're not rotted. Take a look at the basic wiring. One thing I found in a lot of these vehicles is that the master cylinder is leaking, so you want to check underneath, especially look down under the master cylinder where possibly the signs of leakage in the master cylinder can happen. Brake fluid .3 and .4 tends to deteriorate paint. So if you see any paint that's being chipped off underneath the master cylinder, it's probably due to a leak or a former leak. So we want to also check to make sure all the radiator hoses are in good shape. Give them a good squeeze, make sure they're not dry rotted. Check for fuel leaks, put your hand underneath. Make sure you smell to see if there's any fuel leaks from any of the connections. Make sure the hoses are in good shape. You want to check heater hoses, especially the connections. When you look at the connections with the heater hoses, you want to make sure that the tubing is not cracked, that it's leaking. Give it a good little bit of a tug. Make sure they're in good shape. One thing also to look at is the radiator. Is it the original radiator? Has it been modified? Is it an aftermarket radiator? A lot of the new radiators now, they can look like the original radiator and have some modern core, such as a 3-core radiator to give it more cooling. In this case, this is probably the original radiator. We'll look for damage. We always saw some damage down here on the lower end. This may just be cosmetic, but we'll probably pressure test this vehicle later to find out if it's actually leaking. So one of the things we're looking for is to make sure your car is safe and reliable. First thing we start with is look at the tires. Obviously, we want to make sure that the tire is not dry rotted, it's not old. We want to make sure that it's less than, the industry standard right now is 6 years. Some they say can go for 10, but right now the industry's saying anything less than 6 years is probably still okay, but you still want to look for any dry rot around the edges, inside the grooves for dry rot. We also look at these cars. A lot of the cars in the day had single ply tires. The aftermarket world has grown, and now there's a capability of getting aftermarket radial tires. You can find these at Coker or on Summit Racing. They give you another degree of safety going with a modern radial tire. Looking at the suspension, we want to make sure that that's safe and reliable. We want to look at the components of the suspension once we get it up on a rack, or if you can get underneath it, just to make sure that the ball joints, the tie rods, either rods, pivot rods are all in good shape. There are no missing bolts or cotter pins. We want to make sure that the steering box doesn't have a whole lot of slop in it, that there's not leaks from it, and the power steering system, that there are not leaks coming from that. Looking at the springs in the back, we want to make sure that they're in good shape, that the leaves aren't separated from each other, that the shocks are in good shape, that there's no fluid leaking from the shocks. When it comes to brakes, we've already looked at the master cylinder, but we want to make sure that the fluid in the master cylinder is clear. It's usually .3 or .4. That needs to be changed every couple of years to make sure that it's clean. That fluid absorbs water, and we need to make sure that we flush that so we have good, clean fluid in there. When it comes to the brakes itself, we want to pull off the wheel, pull the drum off, make sure the wheel cylinders are not seeping or leaking. There's good pads on it. If it's got disc brakes, we want to go ahead and make sure that there's no corrosion. One thing we want to look at, of course, is to check your tail lights, make sure both your right and left blinker work, and of course the reverse light. These are just some of the basic things to look at when you buy a car from an auction. But to really do a full inspection, to find out all the things that your car needs, bring it to a professional where he can go and thoroughly look at all the mechanical, electrical, and body parts make sure that this car is safe and reliable.